my W-2 was one of my first partners. I was going there getting approved for loans based off my W-2 income. I just kind of outgrown it because of my responsibilities, but I still love science. I still miss it sometimes. So don't let nobody shame you like, oh, you're working for a W-2. You got to, like, what if I like my job?
Welcome to The Real Deal, a commercial real estate investing podcast. I'm your host, Aman. There's a ton going on in the world right now, and much of it impacts real estate investors. The Real Deal podcast will take a look at what's happening and how it influences you as a real estate investor. Each episode is a 20-minute segment dedicated to distilling the day's most important news, so you can stay up to date on what's going on in the world and how it might affect the commercial real estate market.
Welcome back to another episode of Cashflow Capitalist Show. Today I have my old friend, his name is Noel Parnell. Hey Noel, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
It's good to see you again, man. How are you? How's things going?
Man, life has been lifing. I have a 15-month-old baby. I have a 9-week-old puppy, and I have about 20 property managers have to manage, and they all are like babies, man. So life is life. It has its ups and downs, but life in general, I think it's just, I'm so appreciative and blessed. So yes, I'm very happy right now.
All right. Give us your 30-second introduction. Like who you are, how do you get into real estate, and what are you doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, thank you for introducing me, Noel Parnell. I am a former pro athlete, former scientist, full-time real estate investor. I got my start after the Great Recession being laid off. So I've been in real estate for now 15 plus years. And so right now I work on buying apartment buildings, and I still do my small residential new builds and new build construction apartments here in Philadelphia. So I'm in Philly, Texas, and Georgia.
Nice, nice. So, how did you first get into real estate? Like, how was the mindset at that point that you want to be like, I want to leave my science job. I don't want to be a scientist anymore. I want to be in real estate.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the opposite of that. I loved my job and I still love science. The issue was that there was someone that had a power over me that, that terminated, the whole building. It wasn't just me. It was the whole building. And I didn't like that I didn't have any power. And just think about this. I was about 27 years old at this time. I didn't have any real responsibilities, but I seen the looks on people's faces that were, husbands, wives, they were parents, and like, oh, what are we going to do? I didn't like the fact that someone had the power over my livelihood, and they didn't know how hard I was working or how hard somebody else is busting their ass. And so literally I was mad. I was Googling, how did the rich get rich? Because in my mind, it was just some rich person that's making a call like, shut that building down. I want more money. But, I have a better understanding of it now. And I realized that about 90% of wealth comes from real estate. And so my first thing was, all right, how do I get my first property? And so that's what kind of started on me my trajectory that I am on now.
Nice, nice. So yeah, that's what you said, right? Like somebody has the control over your life. Same thing happened in COVID as well, when people did not want to get vaccine because they were not trusting it, but they had to because their employer was pushing it. Government was pushing it. So that's what I really like. So tell us about your first project. What was that?
So I had a lot of first projects. So I had my first. And you can dive into it. It can be my first rehab project. It can be my first seller finance project, or it can be my first house hack. Which one would you like to discuss?
Tell me the very first one.
My very first one was a seller financing project. So I was at this time I was still looking for properties, and I was going door to door, knocking on people's doors on Sundays. And what that taught me is that empathy, because I was kind of finding a list from tax foreclosures and mortgage foreclosures. And I was a bit of an asshole, to be honest, because only thing I was thinking of was myself. Like, oh, me, and no one wants to lose their home, for unforeseen circumstances. I finally found someone, not from the knocking the doors, but from a local RIA. Joe Dixon was his name. It was from Dig in Pennsylvania. Anybody is in Pennsylvania listening in? It's the oldest real estate RIA group in state of Pennsylvania. And I found him, and he was offloading, and he was trying to retire. And he said, "I had this property here. I will seller finance it for you for $45,000." And that was at the time, it was $45,000 at a 7% interest only payment, and it was going to balloon in 36 months. And so this is, you get to think about right now, this time frame. This was back in 2009, 10ish. So interest rates were traditionally higher just because it was coming out of the Great Recession. So I took it, and this is before I knew how to burr. I wasn't burring at the time. I just got a regular loan to get out of it. I didn't know nothing about burring or a cash out refi, but all I knew is that the numbers made sense. I was like, all right. I brought I'm trying to think of to be accurate. I bought about $2,300 down to closing. I gave him $1,000 deposit, and I got the house closed. The tenant that he had was in there for about 16 years. And so the rent there was about $1,400. And the note that I was paying him was on 4,300. So I was making a nice little chunk of change. I was cash flowing, true cash flow about $200, because I had a bunch of like municipal taxes, school taxes, trash and rubbish or sewage. That's what they call it. And that was another life lesson because I didn't know how to balance my checkbook at that time because I had a new property. I was like, oh, I just got cash flow. And I was just taking that money. I was young. I was partying. I was still a scientist. And I was like, hey, this is extra drinking money. And then I would get these tax bills. And I was like, oh, shit. I got to pay $4,500 for this municipal tax. I had another like $3,000 for the school tax. And I was like, oh, snap. Like, I should have been putting escrow away to pay these things. So that was a good lesson learned that, it's not about what you gross, it's about what you net. So that was a rude awakening for me.
And also, you created active income. The seller created a passive income for 36 months.
Passive income. Yep.
And he offloaded the property, and he was like, he had no risk, he had nothing, but you took all the risk.
He
You
had no
made
risk right there because he I think I don't want to say that. And actually, I'm still good friends with him to this day. But maybe he thought I was going to mess up. But because like there was a clause on there, if you get the property back, and I had to pay for the title to come back to him. Because for all you guys and ladies out there who don't know, seller financing is that when you have a property that's free and clear, the owner holds the note as the bank itself, and you're paying him a monthly rate. And so yeah, but he set me on a good trajectory there.
nice. So tell us about your rehab project, and after that, tell us about your multifamily project.
All right, which project you want to know about?
First, rehab.
Oh man, first rehab disaster. The guy, listen to me. It's a 3-story brownstone house. This is 2012, 13. I'm doing this rehab house. You turn on a light switch in the basement, it would come on, but the third floor light would come on. I had duct work. So like after it was completion, I was like, oh, the central air is not working to the bathroom. We go there and scope it. The duct work was there, but it wasn't connected to anything. So this thing about this, the tile is already down, the ceiling's already done. The duct work was never connected. So that's why I wasn't getting no heat and air there. He convinced me about, because I didn't know any better. He put like a used water heater in there. And I was like, what's that date on there for? It already had a date when you mark it. I didn't know any better on there. And he was like, oh, yeah, I had it in my storage. That's why I had that there. He took it from another property, put this used water heater in there. The water element went bad within like the first 6 months. Oh, man. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But one thing I always say, his name was Donnell. I always say this, Donnell Williamson. You were a predator and a creep, but without you, I would have not made the money that I earned from that. Because from that, I learned that guess what? Let me start doing work on my own. And you have to know what like bad stuff looks like and good work looks like to be a really seasoned in that I would say rehab general contractor because I was acting as both, you know. And so he actually helped my like people are like you so mad. I'm like hell no. Like once he did so much crap in that house, I was so confident that I could do another project, and that's what I started finding. I started finding distressed properties and I started learning how from him because I had so many. That's another issue I had about another lesson from him is about how do you manage your contractors. I paid him too much money up front. He wasn't coming and showing up on site, and so from that he taught me valuable lessons that to this day, like I even perfected them. So now when I do like my rehab projects, so I'm working on right now. I have a new ground up construction 6 unit. I have a 12 unit building that I am about to. It's 8 residential and 4 commercial. That's going to get started on in the next 2 months. And then I'm meeting with the council women, and state representatives here because I want to do a 50 unit apartment building from the ground up. But I wanted a portion of that to be dedicated to affordable housing. But knowing how to manage your contractors, I use Amex for everything. So like if my contractor can't take Amex or you don't have a Stripe, I don't deal with them. And people might say, well, you lower the number of people that you can deal with. But what I found is that yes, I lowered my pool of folks, but the quality got better. Like my quality contractors would take that form of payment, and then also I found out they might have been a little bit more expensive, but the efficacy of it and how they worked was so much better. And if there was an issue, I can always call Amex like, hey, take back 20% of this because they didn't finish this correctly. And Amex will
So you
Amex will listen to
can
you. Like,
got
you
it.
know what? Take that back. I also learned to look at trucks. Like, let me see what they're driving in, not to see how stylish they are, but if their truck is unkept and messy, how do you think they're going to keep my job site? That's something that they own, and if they're keeping their work truck and unkept, that means my work site is going to be unorganized.
Yeah,
How
that
well do
makes
they
sense.
follow a project schedule?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I said I have
Yeah.
a degree in biology and a master's of biochemical engineering, but I also
Oh
have my
wow.
PMP. So I
Oh
put
wow.
people on a project Gantt, and I'm like, hey, these are the milestones we have to hit. And this is how I meet with my team members every Sunday night at 10 p.m. and we're game planning for the week. And so I use the Business Gold Amex. All my project managers they have that, so they can make runs for the supplies. But I'm managing from the Gantt, like where are we on this project? Did we pull permits on this one? Did the zoning board come? Because you have to deal with lawyers when you're, in the phase one studies when you're doing ground up. How we're doing with those. So there's silos, but it's project management. You need to have good project management skills to run any good business. Even with the apartment syndications, you need to have it.
Got it. Got it. And yeah, you learned the lesson the hard way by managing the first rehab project, which was like totally disaster. And
Oh
people
man,
say that, oh, learn from other people experience. I'm like, some you never had same experience with other person. You always learn from your own hard way.
that's the one of the thing I always tell people. Like, you see a lot of mentors for like, oh, I'll take the like, so you won't make mistakes. So, like, I got you, so you won't make mistakes. I never tell my mentees that. I always explain to them that failure excels you, but you should not be making the same mistakes. Like mistakes are inevitable, but there shouldn't be the same mistakes. That means you have a methodology or a processes issue there. You know, because some things you just can't predict. I couldn't predict COVID. And I'm very transparent. I doggy paddled through COVID. COVID had all my, I have B and C class buildings, and a lot of my folks. the assholes that weren't paying before definitely didn't pay during COVID. And then the other ones, they like, I live in a tenant friendly city. I was doggy paddling through there. So I was glad I had my degrees that I can go ahead and take consulting jobs because my mortgages come out all the time, automatic. They're the first of the month. My mortgages are coming out. And so I was so appreciative of being battle tested that I'm like, shoot, man, I survived the Great Recession, high interest rates post Great Recession, COVID. I did not miss one payment and I kept all my properties, even with about 40% of my tenants not paying me.
Yeah, that makes
That
sense.
that thing was
That does make sense.
detrimental.
That's the thing. Like those kind of hard steps that can give you another direction where you want to go.
Yeah, I could, and I lead to that is that I would not be able to teach or prepare anybody for COVID because
Yeah,
shit, I wasn't prepared for COVID. Nobody, it
nobody
was
was.
unprecedented.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's like
nobody was.
you had to pivot and try to move against it. It's the same thing with interest rates and basis points keep going up. And some of the pricing values of your properties are going down. How can you cash flow the same way because taxes are still going up? Real estate taxes are going up tremendously. Insurance has gone up shit almost 30%. I keep a lot of metrics and KPIs, but like 30%. And so you'd be like, all right, I'm not cash flowing like this any longer. Can you weather the storm? Do things get better or is this the norm? I like to think that we may have been like from 2010 to I mean that era we had like 8 years where like interest rates were at 2 and 3%. Maybe that was the anomaly. When you look at interest rates in the whole, if you look at a big timeline and look where interest rates were, maybe we were a blimp. That was the anomaly. And guess what? They will never be that way again. Or if they get that way, we'll experience this again. So, hey.
Yeah, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. So then, how did you get into multifamily after this?
So multifamily, I just realized that I already had a bunch of like 5 and 7 units here in Philadelphia. I had those by myself through my private lenders, but I wanted to get bigger, and I guess COVID was a little bit responsible for that because I learned two things from COVID. I was like, all right, I don't want to be in a blue state no more. I want to be in a red state where it is landlord friendly because I was like, I told you before about rents. I was like, I need to be landlord friendly, and I want a certain price point per door. And I really wasn't seeing that in Philadelphia, but I was seeing that like, hey, if I'm spending $600,000, $700,000, for a 5 unit, I can take that down south for Texas and you can double your units. And so I was kind of looking at, multifamily. I can get larger buildings for that price point. And what I didn't know is that, difference from residential is that you can only your net worth will allow you to sign on what type of loan you can get when you're in multifamily commercial real estate. And I was like, oh, huh. I just can't go ahead and get this loan for this property I found. They're like, no, you need to either have a KP, which is a sponsor, key principal, and that person is bringing like their liquid or net worth. And so that's where I was like, oh, apartment syndications. So I went to Michael Blanc's program because I wanted to learn how to underwrite. Everything else I learned, I think it was a good mentorship. Everything else I knew, but I just didn't know how to underwrite properties. And I had a good mentor. I had Kyle Mitchell, who does like asset management out of Phoenix. He taught me a lot about asset management and underwriting. And so to me, that was beneficial.
It's the same Carl Mitchell who wrote the book Best in Class.
That is correct.
There you
That's
go.
my yeah. I
Well,
still I still keep up with Kyle, man. Kyle's a great golfer. People don't know. Yeah, there you go.
there you go. We have the book right
Yeah.
here. I'm reading that book nowadays.
Yeah, he is really good. Like I said, I'm glad I had him as my mentor, and I still reach out to him when I have some issues or like I may like, I always tell people don't be too prideful to ask for help or say I don't know. So like I will reach out to him, and he's such a down to earth man that he to me he does a lot of bigger deals, but like our relationship is still solid where we'll respond and we'll get things going.
Nice, nice, nice. We'll make sure that Carl listen to this too.
Oh yeah, Cal's a great guy, man.
Yeah.
Solid dude. Taught me so much.
And so your first deal was a syndication, or were you bought it by yourself?
So my first larger multi-family deal was done through syndication, a co-GP. That was 156 units, based through Lubbock, Texas, and Louisville, Kentucky. So 92 units in Lubbock, and the remaining were 64 units were in Lubbock, Kentucky. I did, however, just buy a 20 unit in Houston, Texas, about 2 months ago. That we got to talk about that. That I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I got that building for under $5,000. But with the closing, I did a creative financing deal on that property. Got it reappraised at 3.2, but only brought $5,000 to the table to own that property.
Can you share some details, like a little bit more in
Yeah.
detail?
So I was in Lubbock, Texas, which I like Lubbock, and I was coming back on a flight. It pays to play first class, folks, because I heard this woman, in first class, she was saying like, "Hey, she was talking to her neighbor in the seat, and her husband had passed away like a year ago, and the trust was not getting paid out from the property. The property manager wasn't paying them. So I made a deal with her, and that was like literally a handshake deal. Like, hey, I'll take over this building. We'll get this situated. I'll make sure that you don't have to worry about coming out of pocket for your note any longer, and you sell the building to me at this price." We made a handshake deal, and this is on the
Ev-
26th of, huh?
Everything on a plane.
This happened on the plane, handshake deal on the plane. This is very risky. Where I tell people, like, this is one of the things where it was being in the right place in the right time. It's pure luck. Right place, right time. The only thing that wasn't luck is having the knowledge to know how to present a favorable deal to her, and knowing what to do with the existing property manager. Everything else, depending on what you believe in, the universe and things aligning, and how you have to be finely attuned and what you think that could be there. I believe in that as well, but sometimes there's this dumb luck.
Yeah,
That was just dumb luck to me.
that's
Hey,
straight up.
it was just dumb luck.
And you found the deal in Lubbock, Texas, and you syndicated, and there you go. That's your first deal. Now you're syndicator. When you were like thinking about the deal, there was like some sort of risk and all this thing. How did you do the risk management before you underwrite the deal, syndicate the deal? What kind of risk management you had to focus on at that time?
Yeah, I think it's for me, the risk management is knowing that I have my mother's money in that. So the deals that we do, we're not advertising. These are my friends and family. That's their nest eggs. My mom is retired. That is her nest egg in there. So I'm damn for sure going to make sure these numbers are tight. And so that's for me. That's my risk management. There is that I know like these are blue and white collar workers with that are entrusting me, um, with sometimes a little bit of their life savings. And that's so important and not to take for granted there, and the responsibility you hold. So I'm very tough on the PMs. I'm a very tough asset manager based on that. I want to make sure I'm hitting those deliverables.
Yep. Yeah, you it sounded like a tough guy who get the things done, more detail oriented. I need the result no matter what.
Correct. Yeah, it's better to be the a-hole than the friend, and certain aspects of it. I don't want people to be, especially if it's the PM, we can have a cordial relationship, but I, I'm there. I'm there for a purpose, and we have to have that intent of this business plan and that purpose. I always tell a lot of people that want to get into the syndications, like the easiest part is signing on the loan. Once the line is, that's the easiest part. The real work comes the day after, and how do you implement your plan to do what you said you were going to do in that pro forma?
That make total
That's
sense. Yeah,
that's
that's
the hard work.
that's a hard work. Yep, you're totally right.
That's yeah.
And you have to make sure property manager is accountable for every single action
Dude,
they're doing.
how are they reporting to you? It's very, are they following your business plan? Everybody should have a 30, 60, 90-day outlook of what you're doing. You should have an on-site, after you finish closing, you should have an on-site with that property manager going over everything from the CapEx, everything. So you should have all your folks with you, your team to make sure this is a success. And that's why I like less is more to me. So I'm always looking for quality over quantity. So I'm not not like nothing that's wrong with people that are doing a bunch of deals and just revving them out. But for me, I want to stabilize a product first before moving on to the next. Because if the size of the building, there's so many moving parts of things that happen. I need to make sure that's delivering on that particular building before I'm moving on to something else. Because then if not, you get caught up. And then once you get caught up, now you're stressed, and now things fall through the floors, and now you can't make your distributions. Cash
Mm.
call.
Cash calls,
No
man.
investor wants to do a cash call.
That's the nightmare for every single operator. Cash calls.
Yeah.
And
And so that's why
yeah.
I don't do my syndications for, I think that's one of the ways you get paid by acquisition fees, but that's not my driver. That's not my driver to get a deal done. And I think partly because I already owned all my real estate by myself, so I know what I earn already. I'm just trying to get to another level, and get to another level is by net worth. I need to kind of keep leveling up because I only use syndication as a vehicle, as a tool. That's all it is. It's another tool in your real
It's a
estate,
tool, yeah.
tool to execute. Because ultimately, my goal is I want to get into owning a sports team. So I want to like a partnership into either baseball or hockey. Buy into that. You can syndicate into those. People don't even know that. There's a lot of syndications that buy into those teams, but that's the ultimate goal where I get a net worth where I can buy a minority stake into either a minor league team, a major league soccer. That's the goal. That's where I want to go into.
Can you buy a UFC? I want to buy. I want to invest in that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think UFC might be privately owned.
I think so too. But I think there should be some sort of like maybe you can invest. I don't know about that. But so you also told me before the call like you're doing some challenge, real estate challenge. Can you share about that too?
Yeah, so one of my mentees was like, oh, they were frustrated, and she was just saying she's voicing her frustration. So I always like to have my Monday morning musters because I think Sundays really set the tone, but I'm always excited about Mondays. So I'm always like, all right, what do we hope to achieve this week? That's why I like to kind of get into like the mindset of my mentees. And she was a bit down, just from like the weekend and the previous week. And she was just saying, it's a lot easier for me because I've been in real estate so long and established that that my success is for that reason. And I always like to point out, like, how many months I went without, grabbing a property. But I told her better yet, I was like, I'll take that challenge. I will go to any city that I know no one in. That means I can't know any personal friends there. I can't have any former banking relationships there, or a private lender or hard money relationships there. I will go there and I will stay as long as needed, hopefully under a year, and I will grab a property. And that means that I may actually have to get a job because remember, I said I can't use any of my personal funds. So I'm going to open up an account, at a local bank or whatever area it is. I'll start sharing it like, hey, this is Noel Parnell. This is what it is. I don't worry about any previous because all my properties are in LLC, so they're not going to see it unless I tell them. So I'm not going to disclose it. So technically, I'm going to look on paper that I have nothing. So for me, I'm gonna do it. And my first one out there is going to be in a personal name,
So
and I'm gonna document.
what's the first location are you moving to?
So right now I'm gonna do a poll on Instagram, but we have right now we have the states, Arizona, we have Kansas City, which is not a state, it's a city, but Kansas City. We also have Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and you have Wisconsin in general there. Those are places where I'm like, okay, I know absolutely no one there. The other places are like Wyoming and North Dakota. I'm like, it's too damn cold, and it's not like a major airport where I can just fly in and out to come see my son or whatever. Because there's a sacrifice on that in itself as well. So, but yeah, I don't want to be cold, so I'm not going to North Dakota or Wyoming.
You're like
Uh,
cold. I love cold, but I don't like snow.
no,
I hate snow.
I don't like cold. I would think about Utah maybe a little bit. I didn't think about that. I know no one in Utah, so I know in Denver also. I know no one in Denver, Colorado, so that could be a aspect as well. I like Denver, the city there too.
Yep, that's really really dry. Like that's the place we met, for the best ever conference, and that's
Oh yeah,
really
you're right.
dry. And
Yep,
remember that our lips were getting dry, they were getting ripped off, and all this thing. I'm like, no, I don't want to live in Denver.
yep,
And
yeah,
so
you're right.
so what advice do you want to give to somebody who's starting new in real estate and in 2023?
Uh, yeah. My first one is never accept a no from someone who doesn't have the power to tell you yes. And the second is that don't be guilt shamed. Social media is so popular out here that you can look at somebody and feel like you're so far behind. So don't be guilt shamed that like, oh, you're right on time, you're right the course. Long as you're being actionable, you're being consistent, and you have the discipline to go after what you want, you will be okay. The third thing is that this is really grind. This really makes me so mad. I see social media guys and so-called gurus do it all the time. Stop, stop shaming people for having a W-2 job. Stop. Everybody doesn't hate their job, sir or ma'am. Like, listen, it's okay if you want to work your W-2. It's fine. My W-2 was one of my first partners. I was going there getting approved for loans based off my W-2 income. I just kind of outgrown it because of my responsibilities, but I still love science. I still miss it sometimes. So don't let nobody shame you like, oh, you're working for a W-2. You gotta like, what if I like my job?
I just want to say
Like,
social media is delusional. Just don't trust
dude,
whatever you see. And I want to add something to your second point, that everybody have their different journeys. Like if you did your first deal in like 1 year, somebody might be there who took 2 years. Somebody might be there who took 3 years. Everybody have a different journey. So don't compare yourself to anybody else. Comparison is a thief of joy. Don't do it, because you have different journey, other person a different journey.
yep, absolutely.
And so, if you have to recommend a book, either for education or mindset, which one would you recommend?
Oh, well, you already used best in class, but I'll tell everybody one of that set me straight. I love this one. I started with Unshakable,
Nice.
Tony Tony
I
Robbins,
read that too.
and from the Unshakable, I went from there, and I thought it's up here. I don't know where I put it. It might be in my downstairs. I might lent it out. Business Mastery. It's a lot thicker, but that book right there was great for me. I love those two books. And my third one that I'll recommend, Who Not How.
Who the How?
Sometimes
That's a
we're
great
always
book.
trying
Yeah.
to figure out like, I gotta do this. It's sometimes you just need to connect with people
Yeah.
and figure out how to make. I'm big on that. Is saying, guess what? How can we make the best of our relationship?
Who can help me?
That's it. That's
Yeah.
it.
That's it.
You know,
That's it.
that's it.
And I'm gonna ask you like three more questions. So, what is your morning routine as entrepreneur?
So I'm up every morning around 4:30, 4:45, the latest. I'm driving about 35 minutes to the gym. So within that 35 minutes, I'm always listening to it's literally one of the four people. It's going to be Earl Nightingale, Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins, or David Goggins. Those one of the four I'm listening to that morning to get like my mind right. So like that's my morning. My gym workout starts at 5:30 a.m. The culture where you people around, people are like, you travel that far to go to a gym. Well, two reasons I do that. One is that it gives me time to like prime my mind. The second part is my gym is that these folks, when people wake up at that early in the morning, it's a CrossFit gym. They're there because they want to be there. Nobody wants to go that hard in that morning, and you want to be there. And so I love being around that type of energy, and knowing that you're not going to be the best. So iron's going to sharpen iron. So I love that. On my ride back, I'm normally listening to an audiobook. And sometimes I'll re-listen to audiobooks, but it's always an audiobook. I keep a lot. I have audibles, so I go through those on an audiobook. I get home around 7:30. I walk the puppy, and then I'm having breakfast with my son. I make breakfast for my son every morning. We sit down. We have breakfast. We have breakfast together. 8:30. I have a morning muster meeting with some team members. And then I start, my day is kind of planned out every Sunday. So I have it mapped out. But my day normally ends at 5 p.m. because that's family time again with my son. I'm going to make sure that I'm having dinner, I'm eating, and then I'll get back online around 10ish. And that's just only to kind of like recap on any emails I missed out on and be like, all right, I need to address those for the next morning because I have a time slot where I'm just addressing emails, or I actually put in like a time slot for social media. Like I need to make content for social media. That's 1:30 normally every day for me. Like I need to make content for social media. So, of course today, because I met at 1:30 with you, I had to, shift it. But I knew from planning on Sunday, like what's going on. So it's just really being a master of your schedule. I don't believe in busy work. I fell into that trap to be doing a bunch of hours and losing sleep only to make yourself feel good. It needs to be actionable work with an intent to where you're trying to go. So everything needs to be actionable, and it has to be an intent. And I only try to do like 3 to 4 main things need to get accomplished per day. Everything else is kind of like routine work that I need to for the business, but it has to be actionable. You don't get any credit just because you're like, oh, I've been up 18 hours. Oh, why? There's no badge of honor in that.
It needs to be productive.
Correct.
Yeah. And if today is the last day on this planet, what message do you want to give to the world?
I did it my way. It's my favorite song, Frank Sinatra. If you haven't heard it, listen to Frank Sinatra, My Way. That's any. If you just print out the lyrics or listen to it, that whole song is that is it. I did it my way. That's what I want people to understand. I have my rights, my wrongs, but I am so happy and content. I have no regrets because I did it my way, and I did it with just, I guess, with love, something like I'm happy. I tell people that you have to know what happiness means to you and how to obtain happiness, because if you don't, you'll walk around miserable. You need to always find out what happiness means to you. I love every morning I get to eat breakfast with my son, and he's just throwing crap at me. He's a toddler, so he's throwing stuff. I love those daggone mornings. I love it. I'm happy. That's what it is. Oh man, so I am. My email is at Noel at Crown CROWN Capital CAPITAL Corp.com. I'm also on social media, Instagram. It's a satire name, Christian sex symbol. It's only satire. I'm not changing it because it's funny. So you gotta be lively. So Christian sex symbol spelled just the way it is. I'm on there. I'm always placing out good content and giving this out free anything there. And then you can visit the website, crowncapitalcorp.com. But yeah.
I'll make sure we add everything on the show notes.
Yes.
And thank you so much, Noel, for your time, for your knowledge. And I'll see you in some other conference, and we can connect after that too.
Next time you go to Houston, let's definitely link for Houston, man.
All right, man, for sure. All right, it's nice seeing you. I'll connect you another one. All right, boy.
All right, thanks so much, sir.
Right, you take it.
Thank you for joining us on The Real Deal, a commercial real estate investing podcast, the show that covers everything to do with multifamily real estate investing to help you become an expert in your real estate ventures. We're here to help you create passive income and financial freedom so that you can achieve what you want whenever you want. We'll catch you next time on The Real Deal.